Yesterday, thousands of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. to demand justice for an election that they truly believe was fraudulently stolen from them. They assaulted police officers, broke windows, busted into the House and Senate chambers, occupied congressional offices, and at the end of the day, one woman was dead. And next thing you know, left-wing mouthpieces and liberal politicians began rummaging through the garbage for the spines they'd thrown out under Obama, coming out in droves to denounce violence and pretend like they didn't spend the last, decade encouraging Black Lives Matter and Antifa to beat people senseless and set fire to the country. So here's the deal. Plain and simple. If you turned a blind eye to the insanity, the violence, and the bloodshed that ripped apart our nation for months last year because it was your preferred group of victims calling it justice, you don't get to say jack all about anything that happened yesterday. So take several seats and shut up, you lying, two-faced hypocrites. Buckle up, I've got some things to say. What happened yesterday was wrong. Attacking police officers, vandalizing public property, and threatening innocent people is wrong. I don't care what t-shirt you're wearing, whose logo is on it, or what reasons you think you have. And I don't need to defend my record on saying that. You want my take? Head over to Twitter. Pissed off a lot of people yesterday, lost some followers, and not a wink of sleep. Because attacking cops and breaking into a public building is wrong, and I'm okay with saying so. And you want to know why I get to say that? Because I spent all of last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, calling out Antifa and Black Lives Matter for their senseless violence. Violence that not only ripped apart our cities and towns, but literally left people dead in the street. Violence that wrecked homes and small businesses, that stripped innocent people, mostly minorities, of their workplaces and grocery stores. Violence that wasn't in a well-protected federal building, but against citizens. I can say that because I've personally sat with business owners and watched the tears roll down their faces because their lives were shattered by insane mobs that burned down their stores for no reason. And we were told again and again and again by the liberal news media and Democrat politicians and left-wing talking heads that all of that was perfectly acceptable because it was in the name of justice. Remember this over at CNN from Chris Cuomo?
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal. Morally, in the eyes of the law, yes, but in the eyes of good and evil. But when someone comes to call out bigots and it gets hot, even physical, are they equally wrong as the bigot they are fighting? I argue no.
Oh, but now these same demagogues who stumped for the communist thugs burning down our cities are clutching their pearls and grabbing for their smelling salts because the other side finally got pissed off enough to start throwing punches. They're perfectly fine when the blood in the streets is ours or some innocent person who got caught up in the crossfire. But when it's a dude with a MAGA hat busting in a window, suddenly glass is sacred and you can't fight with your fists. And no, I'm not going to ignore this double standard because it is a huge part of what got us here. This was D.C. yesterday. This was D.C. back in May when Black Lives Matter lit it on fire. And not only did the left not say a single word against it, they renamed a street after the Marxist thugs who did it. Here's Vox in September saying that riots are destructive, dangerous, and scary, but can lead to serious reforms. And here's Vox yesterday saying that every person who forced their way into the Capitol should be arrested. Which is it, jackholes? Where was this outrage when Antifa tried to burn down a federal courthouse in Portland repeatedly? Or when Black Lives Matter was torching police departments and churches? Or when they set fire to a house in Richmond, Virginia with a little girl inside? You guys didn't give two craps about that. You sat there in your cushy anchor chairs and cheered on the mob while the body of David Dorn lay dead in the street, while an elderly man was undergoing surgery because his jaw had been shattered by a Black Lives Matter criminal with a bottle. While cops were getting hit in the head with rocks and trash can lids, and people were getting dragged out of their cars and beaten in intersections, politicians like Jerry Nadler were claiming Antifa was a myth.
There's violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa? That's happening in Portland right now? There's riots.
That's a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
And now, after encouraging all of that for years, after standing in front of burning buildings calling it a mostly peaceful protest, the self-appointed moral arbiters over at CNN and NBC have suddenly decided that violence is bad? That protesting in anger is wrong because what? Now it threatens you? In a speech from his taxpayer-funded high horse, Chucky Schumer repeatedly called the Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol Wednesday thugs.
Those who perform these reprehensible acts cannot be called protesters. No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists.
So now we can call them thugs. Now that's okay. You can't say it when liberals are destroying cities and assaulting citizens and ransacking Target because it's racist. Those are just disenfranchised victims expressing their frustrations with the system. But Trump supporters lose their crap on the Capitol steps and suddenly we're back to law and order and being peaceful. You don't get to have it both ways. You hypocritical, two-faced, disingenuous sacks of garbage. You don't get to sit here now like you have some kind of high ground because you just dug out the moral compass out of your junk drawer yesterday before rushing into your studio to blast people you don't like because they finally started swinging back. You celebrated violence for years. Every person who broke into the Capitol, caused damage, or violently attacked the police should be arrested and charged because those are crimes and they hurt people. And next time BLM burns a city or Antifa attacks a federal building, every time they throw a brick through a barbershop window or at a cop car, every time they set fire to public housing or beat someone to death, every single one of them should be arrested and charged too. The difference is that the right has called out both by name and without hesitation, but the left will never, ever hold their own accountable. And that is why a huge part of 74 million people are so pissed off. And that's your reality check, America. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and for the love of all that is holy, stop attacking cops.